I have no idea what Algerian food is like. Have you been to any of these places, and what kind of dishes do you get there? What kind of food is it?
Some pastries, desserts. Interestingly, Algerians have their own style of pizza, and
Ah,
so there's an Algerian pizza place.
oh, cool.
They're starting, it seems like, by taking over existing businesses. So, like one of the businesses was a donut shop, and the Algerians are running it now, and so they're doing
Mm.
donuts and Algerian pastries and pizza.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies, because the best part of any trip is what you eat. I'm Brent Peterson, and this week we're in the surprising city of Columbus, Ohio, for a dish called Johnny Marzetti, creating foodie hotspots from vacant buildings, and a Chinese dish that doesn't seem Chinese at all. My guest this week for this foodie adventure is Bethia Woolf. Bethia is a Brit who's made Columbus her home for over 2 decades. She founded Columbus Food Adventures at columbusfoodadventures.com, and it's now blossomed into one of the best food tour companies in the country, even being named Top Food Tour by USA Today. Bethia tells me about some of the different neighborhoods in Columbus worth exploring and the surprising diversity of the city. Plus, Columbus-style pizza, a dinner series from 30 different countries, and Algerian food in Columbus. And I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Bethia Woolf from Columbus Food Adventures. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. We're going to have some fun talking about Columbus and food and maybe Ohio State football. I don't know. We'll see how the conversation goes.
Not a great topic right now.
Kind of a rapid end to the season, but
Yeah.
hey, my team's Illinois, so we're never in the playoffs. So you guys are doing better than us. I wanted to talk to you today because you guys, you're one of the highest rated food tour companies in the whole country. And I wanted to ask you about Columbus because it's kind of one of those under the radar type cities. It doesn't pop up on a list of top foodie destinations, but I'm wondering, besides the food scene, what is it that makes Columbus a cool place to visit?
Columbus is a city that it always exceeds people's expectations. Like you said, people maybe haven't heard a lot about Columbus or don't come in with, a lot of expectation. But Columbus has a few different things. One is it's very much a city of neighborhoods. And so we have these really great walkable historic neighborhoods, vibrant art districts, up and coming kind of, former industrial neighborhoods. So we have these really great, very different character neighborhoods to explore. We also are a city of festivals. So particular, I think kind of spring through fall in particular, every weekend there is at least one, often multiple competing festivals. We have arts festivals, food festivals. We have the largest pride in the Midwest. We have community festivals. And so there's really just kind of a lot of vibrancy on the streets and from those festivals. But it's a really easy city to navigate. I grew up in London. I've lived in Toronto, and bigger cities, they obviously have a wealth of things there, but they can just be hard to get around. And, it can take an hour to 2 hours to get somewhere, and parking and navigating is expensive or hard. But Columbus is just a very easy city to navigate. People joke that nothing is ever more than 20 minutes away. And we have a lot of great attractions. We have one of the top ranked zoos in the country. We have some really cool kind of newer art attractions. We have a really fun kids science museum. We have a vibrant art scene. But I think the last thing is that people are really friendly. And one of the comments we get when we talk to a lot of visitors, and they're always like, "Oh, people here are so nice."
Midwest nice, right?
Yeah. And I think Columbus, really exemplifies that. So I think people can really come here and have a great experience, whether they're coming here as a family, whether they're coming as, for a couple, as a couple, or even, as a solo traveler, can, of any age can have a great experience in Columbus.
Are you getting visitors from around the country or mostly from the Midwest? What's the profile look like for a person who would come to visit Columbus?
I would say primarily, Columbus gets a lot of drive traffic. So we definitely get a lot from the rest of Ohio and surrounding states. But we do, because people from Ohio have kind of spread themselves all over the country. We do get a lot of people visiting because they've lived somewhere else, or because their family's somewhere else, or their kids have moved somewhere else and then come back and visit. So we do get a lot of visitors from all over the country, and we get some, international visitors too. I think because it's a big university town, but also we have some really big international events here, like the Arnold Sports Festival, which draws people from all over the world.
Sports is huge in Columbus. Obviously, you've got the NHL team, and of course, the Ohio State football team, which is basically a professional team. I mean, as far as popularity goes, I mean, you've got, I don't know how big the stadium is, but probably close to 100,000 people coming in there on football weekends.
Over 100,000 people.
Yeah. What is it like on football weekends? I remember when I was going to the University of Illinois back in the 80s when they actually had good football teams. It was crazy on football weekends.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of buzz around football, and that brings people in when we have playing teams from other parts of the country. That brings people in as well. But it's actually funny. I think, the population of Columbus has been growing a lot. And it used to be kind of this joke. Well, if you want to go grocery shopping, or you want to go to the zoo, or you want to do anything else, the best time to do it is during a football game.
Right.
But honestly, that's not really true anymore, because sometimes I think, oh, I'm, going to go do this errand or do something during a football game. And it's kind of surprising now that places are still busy, because even though there's still this huge buzz and excitement around the stadium, there's still, there's a lot of other people, and there's a lot of transplants here who maybe aren't, fully
not on
embraced
board
in the Ohio State football culture.
You mentioned Columbus being a city of neighborhoods, and that's something that resonates with me growing up in the Chicago area, because Chicago is a city of neighborhoods as well. You guys do a tour in German Village. Tell me about this. Obviously, lots of Germans came to the Midwest, 200 years ago, 150 years ago. Tell me about German Village, and what's that like, and what's your tour like?
Yeah, so German Village, just to kind of paint the picture, it's a really beautiful neighborhood. They say that it's the largest privately restored neighborhood in the country. It has over 1,000 buildings that are over 100 years old. So it's these brick houses primarily. A lot of like small little brick cottages, but also the kind of more elaborate Queen Anne style brick houses with kind of gingerbread trim, the kind of that more Victorian style. But brick streets, kind of small, the houses, because they were older, it's kind of more of that sort of dense neighborhood. So it's just a really beautiful neighborhood. It has a quite strict historic preservation group, so it's been very well preserved, and it has, sometimes I think people think it's going to be kind of like a Little Italy type of thing, but it's not. It's become a very desirable residential neighborhood, but scattered throughout it are these great restaurants and businesses. We have, a really wonderful shop called Helen Wintermore's that's been in business for almost 100 years that focuses on American artisan crafts. We have the book loft, which has over 200 rooms of books, and it's kind of this maze warren. But then we have, one of our top patisseries in the city. We have some great delis and sandwich shops. We have some really popular kind of more fine dining restaurants. And so but it's kind of the neighborhood that really lends itself to exploration and kind of wandering around and little discoveries and noticing the architectural details. Um, and it's because it is more of this sort of residential neighborhood, and everything was built really before kind of zoning codes and urban planning, I guess. There's no kind of main thoroughfare, and so I think that's one of the reasons why taking a tour in that neighborhood is so great, because we help people find all of these nice little details and help explain the significance of the architecture and the history and tell some of the stories that help the neighborhood come to life.
Since this is German Village, there must be a spot where I can get a good beer. Where would I go to get a mug of beer in German Village?
So probably one of the most iconic restaurants in German Village is a business called Schmidt's. And Schmidt's is pretty famous. It attracts a lot of visitors because it was featured on Man vs. Food, the TV show. And so they're really well known for a few things. They have this special kind of sausage called Bahama Mama that is kind of a smoked spice, bratwurst sausage, but their own recipe. They do these cream puffs that are really huge, but they also have, a good selection of German beers. And so if you kind of want that German beer and culture, Schmidt's would definitely be somewhere to go. But there's quite a few kind of good classic old school neighborhood bars in German Village.
If you're enjoying Destination Eat Drink, take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast app. It just takes a moment, and it helps other foodie travelers just like you find the show. And if you want to hear more of my conversation with Bethia, become a member of my Substack. Members get access to longer versions of my interviews. And in this one, Bethia goes into more detail about her dinner series and how the idea helped keep her company and restaurants afloat during COVID. Become a member of my Substack at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. You guys also do a food hall tour, and food halls, they've been popular here in Europe for a long, long time. And I always love seeking out food halls when I go to a new city around here. But now they're starting to gain traction in other places, like in the US. Tell me a little bit about your food hall tour in Columbus.
Yeah, so the food halls, definitely have been gaining popularity here for a few years. And one of the things that's really cool about the way they've developed in Columbus is we've had some developers who've taken old historic buildings that had been vacant in a couple of cases for decades, and have transformed them into these really amazing spaces. And so, you have these kind of interesting architectural buildings that then host this kind of wealth of small, independent, varied food businesses. So we, on our tour, we go to three of them. Two of them are in historic buildings. One of them is completely different. It's actually a new build that's kind of part of a whole new development. And they're trying to make it more of a kind of meeting point, gathering, social point for this new development. But the nice thing that we can offer on the food tour is this really curated experience. And I think food halls are wonderful because they offer all this great choice, but sometimes, we know that choice can be a little paralyzing.
Sure.
And sometimes people get a little anxious about what to choose, what to order. And, you have all these colorful booths and everything's kind of competing for your attention. And you're like, I don't know what to order.
One of everything, please.
Yeah. And so that, on the tour, we're able to pick our favorites. And, we've tried everything in all these food halls. And so we're able to choose the things that we think are delicious and interesting to share with people. So they don't have to make any decisions. They don't have to think about it. And they don't have to be overwhelmed.
That's one of the great things about going on a really good food tour. when people know the places and they know the vendors, they know the proprietors, and they know that they're doing good work. It's not a fly-by-night organization. So this is why I always say, take the food tour. It'll be worth it, especially when you go to Columbus, because you guys are so well recognized at Columbus Food Adventures. Besides the food tour, another thing that I always try to do when I go to a new city is to check out the immigrant neighborhoods and the immigrant restaurants, because they often have the most interesting and tasty cuisine. Even here in Portugal, which is known for its traditional Portuguese cuisine, that world is changing now. You're seeing immigrants from former colonies. You're seeing immigrants from Nepal coming in here. You're seeing an American influence here as well. And it's really changing the way that we go out and eat here. And I'm wondering, in Columbus, you must have some really great immigrant communities there. Can you tell me a little bit about some of them in your city?
Yeah, I would be happy to. This is one of my favorite things to talk about.
Oh, good.
You had talked, at the beginning, you mentioned that, people don't have that much expectations from Columbus. And I think one of the things that people just really don't realize is how diverse cities like Columbus have become. And we have been, chronicling, exploring and seeking out international food in Columbus for almost 20 years. And in our most recent survey that we did last year, we actually found food, when I say food, either restaurants or markets or food trucks, representing over 70 different nationalities in Columbus.
Wow.
I think that's just really distinct from a lot of people's impression of Ohio,
Sure.
Columbus. But it's really one of the strengths of the city is, how varied the food scene and the culture is. We have in Columbus, we have the second largest Somali population in the country. We also, you mentioned Nepal. We have a lot of Nepali Bhutanese refugees. Unsurprisingly, in the US, we have a lot of people from Mexico and Central and South America. Particularly, we have quite a large population from El Salvador. We have, a lot of people from India, from Korea. Columbus, there's a large Honda plant near Columbus, so we have more Japanese than you might expect, Chinese. And then one of the newer populations we've been getting recently is a lot of Algerians.
Oh, and what's the reason for that? Do you know?
So, it's actually a fun story. So, I don't know if you're aware of the diversity lottery visa program.
Yep.
Algeria is one of the countries that recently people have been able to get the lottery visas.
Okay.
And so there is a woman. So we have a nonprofit in Columbus that their focus is helping people that come in. So traditionally, there's been a lot of support for refugees, and we have quite a few refugee resettlement agencies. But this nonprofit realized that there was kind of a gap for people that were coming in for the lottery program, because they get a visa, but they really don't get any other support. And so people were coming and they, just figuring out, how does trash collection work? How do you get your kids signed up for school? How do you find a job? How do you understand your mail, official letters you're getting in the mail? And so they realized there was a need for support for things like that. And so they had one of their kind of clients who came to them was an Algerian woman who had come to the US and moved to Columbus. But she got really engaged in the organization as she got settled, and eventually she started working for the organization. And now she's kind of become almost like famous in Algeria and on the online forums. And so people say, oh, if you're moving to America, this lady can help you figure everything out. And so it kind of starts. And so now there's an Algerian community. It kind of then it attracts people because they know there's other Algerians. But it's largely because of this one woman, Hamida, that people then, now come. And I think, also there's a lot of opportunity in Columbus. The job market is healthy, the cost of living is reasonable. So there's a lot of reasons why Columbus is attractive for migrants. But yeah, so we have this kind of growing Algerian population, and so we're starting to see some Algerian restaurants and food businesses. And
I was just going to ask you, like, so there, that's usually one of the first steps when a new migrant community comes in is they start opening grocery stores and restaurants because the barrier to entry is relatively low, and you can get a business up and running pretty quickly. I have no idea what Algerian food is like. Have you been to any of these places, and what kind of dishes do you get there? What kind of food is it?
so far, what I've been seeing in the restaurants and food businesses is some pastries, desserts. Interestingly, Algerians have their own style of pizza, and so there's an Algerian pizza place.
Oh, cool.
Also, they have kind of Algerian sandwiches, but we run a monthly series of dinners. And so every month we have what we call a taste of dinner. And so we explore different cuisines. And so we did a taste of Algeria dinner. And so they did, all these courses with couscous. And so that there's really a wealth of food. Some of it is similar to Moroccan food. Some of it is maybe a little bit more kind of Middle Eastern. It's kind of like crosses between Middle Eastern and Moroccan. But I think we'll see more of that. They're starting, it seems like, by taking over kind of existing businesses. So like one of the businesses was a donut shop, and the Algerians are running it now. And so they're doing donuts and Algerian pastries and pizza. And then one of the other businesses was kind of a pizza and wing place, and they've added Algerian sandwiches onto it.
Oh, awesome. There's lots more food and travel at destinationeatdrink.com. I just published a brand new food and travel guide to Ravenna, an amazing medieval city in Italy. But there's much more to Ravenna than just the mosaics. There's a little hat pasta, a unique flatbread, and a seafood festival. Read a free excerpt at destinationeatdrink.com/blog or download your ebook at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. And speaking of Ravenna, it's also where Dante of Inferno fame spent the last few years of his life. I just posted a story about why he's entombed in Ravenna and not Florence, his hometown, and why Florence is trying to get his bones back. You can read that story at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I've also posted a brand new video, this one from Nice, France. Time Out magazine recently named Nice one of the best cities for hot chocolate, so I put Nice to the test. Plus, I check out the views of the French Riviera from Castle Hill and down in a Nice liquor called Pastis while pondering my future as a rock star. Watch that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or go to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. Bethia, you're from England, and all of my English friends here and all my English friends here in Portugal and everywhere else, they love Indian food. So you mentioned there's an Indian community in Columbus. Where do you go to get a good curry? Because I think of British people as experts on good curries.
Yeah, so one thing that's nice in Columbus is that we have quite a lot of different regional Indian food. And so we have some great South Indian places where we can get things like dosas. And then, we have a lot of North Indian restaurants. I really love Pakistani food. And so I guess, if I'm going for curry, often I'll be going to a Pakistani restaurant. But yeah, we have a good variety of Indian food in Columbus. That's one of the things we're lucky, and some great Indian markets as well.
We lived in Austin for a while, and you talked about the influence of businesses coming in from overseas. In Austin, there were a lot of Indian engineers who came in to work in the tech sector, places like 3M. This is a decade ago. And because of that, amazing Indian restaurants opened up in North Austin. You know, you don't think of Austin, Texas as a place to get good Indian food, but then the markets started opening up as well, you know, that would have the samosas out on the counter and in front of the market and stuff like that. So it's amazing what can happen when you start bringing people in for work and for other reasons as well. But I did want to talk to you. I did want to talk to you a little bit about some of these dishes that I read about, because I am certainly no expert on Columbus cuisine. And as I started researching for this conversation, Bethia, I came across a dish that I wanted to ask you about specifically called Johnny Marzetti. And I read, I had to read this a couple of times. I'm like, Johnny Marzetti, was he a quarterback for Ohio State in the 1970s? Who's Johnny Marzetti? But it's not a guy, it's a dish. Tell us about Johnny Marzetti a little bit.
So Johnny Marzetti is an interesting dish, and I would guess that you may have grown up with something similar, because I think there are similar dishes in different parts of the country that are called different names. Basically, Johnny Marzetti is a pasta bake with pasta, I think usually kind of like a macaroni or kind of that ziti or kind of pasta with pasta shells, ground beef, tomato sauce, sometimes green peppers or mushrooms, you know, the recipes vary, and then cheese, and then you bake it in the oven. And it is not a food that you find in a lot of restaurants. Occasionally as some places do it as a special, maybe some diners and places have it, but it's not a big restaurant food. It is the food that, you know, was very popular in, you know, the casserole, you know, eras, I guess. And it was very much a staple of school dinners. It was, you know, often people, will get nostalgic about it because they had it for their school lunch. And sadly, it doesn't feature on school lunches very much anymore because the dietary guidelines changed. And so kind of schools, I think, they have to focus more on vegetables, less on red meat, less on pasta, things like that. But it's definitely kind of a nostalgia comfort food. Yeah, you can find it. There's a few places. We have a really great independent grocery store called Wyland's, and they sell it ready made that people can buy trays of it. They sell a lot of it. But it's more that kind of nostalgia thing that maybe your mom or your grandma made, or maybe you had,
That's where I saw it. Yeah, growing up in Chicago, I mean, countless potlucks and stuff. I never even knew if there was a name for it in Chicago. Maybe there's a specific different name in Chicago, but it was just, pasta bake or something like that. And you'd see it on tables.
Call it goulash. I think sometimes people call it goulash, or I saw a few other names. I've seen a few other names for it, but maybe somebody listening will be like, "Oh, we used to call it this."
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask some of my friends, because we all grew up with that. I mean, everyone remembers. And for school lunches, you're right. It was for a school lunch because, it was cheap and easy to make. And this is back in the days when, the school lunch wasn't outsourced. They were actually making lunches in the back and everything. Let's talk about another dish. And this one sounds unusual too. I didn't grow up with this one for sure. War Su Gai. Kind of a Chinese amalgamation of stuff. Is that where that comes from?
Yeah, it is a Chinese American dish. It is probably the least Chinese seeming of all Chinese American dishes.
Right.
And it is definitely another dish that is kind of nostalgia. It is comprised of deep fried chicken, served over a bed of lettuce with a gravy that is often kind of the color of lemon curd, kind of bright yellowy orange kind of gravy.
Okay.
Sprinkled with either peanuts or almonds, and then maybe some scallions to add a little color, and served with rice. And the kinds of restaurants you get at are the Chinese restaurants that have been open since the 1950s.
Mm.
It is said to have originated at a restaurant called the Far East that was open in the 1920s in Columbus. That restaurant closed, but there's another restaurant that kind of took its place in the 1950s, and they still serve it. But it is a Chinese American kind of comfort nostalgia food
Sure.
with, I would say, very little kind of Chinese flavor to it.
This would be kind of like the canned stuff that we grew up with in the 70s. You know, you'd go into the grocery store and you'd buy these cans of Chinese, so-called, I'm using air quotes, Chinese food, and you'd just put them in a pot and warm it up, and that would be it, you know? And I'm trying to remember. Oh, I can't even remember the name, but there was a very famous company that used to make it. I remember their
the chop suey kind of thing.
Yeah, chop suey. But I'm trying to remember their slogan. It was the name of the company, and their tagline was "Swings American." You know, it was Chinese food, swings American, but it was the name of the company. So, man, I'm trying to remember all this stuff now. This is going back over 50 years, so it's hard to remember back that far.
So the Warsu guy, I think, is actually there's a very similar dish that's popular in some of the old school Chinese restaurants in Detroit that I think they call ABC, or like almond boneless chicken.
Yeah.
But here it seems to be more that they use peanuts now. And I think in the Detroit version it's kind of more almonds, but I think they're pretty similar dishes from what I've read.
Interesting. You guys do a pizza tour, and
we do.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as Columbus style pizza?
Oh, there most definitely is. There most definitely is.
Tell me about
it. So Columbus style pizza is, I'd say, kind of a subset of the Midwest tavern cut. But the characteristics of a Columbus style pizza: thin crust, very thin crust, like cracker thin crust. Edge-to-edge toppings, square cut, kind of a sweeter sauce, and provolone cheese.
So this sounds very familiar to me, Bethia. Being from Chicago, I always say deep dish pizza is not what Chicagoans eat. We eat tavern-style pizza, which is a thin crust pizza all the way to the edge with the sauce. Yep. And cut into squares. This is what we would normally eat on a Friday night or after work or something like that. Tavern style pizza. That's what this sounds. Although I don't know that we
very
use
similar.
Yeah, I don't know that we use provolone cheese, but
that's one of the differences. So at Columbus, they often use cornmeal underneath the crust.
Okay.
And the cheese blend is different. But it's very similar. A lot of the Midwestern cities have a similar kind of tavern cut, but there is, little differences that make a Columbus style pizza. One of my friends wrote a whole book on Columbus style pizza and the history of Columbus pizza.
Oh, wow.
But one of our claims to fame in Columbus is Ezzo pepperoni, and Ezzo pepperoni is used all over the country, like, a lot of the top pizzerias in New York and just, nationwide get their pepperoni from Columbus. And Izzo pepperoni, they make the cup and char kind of pepperoni. So when it goes in the oven, you get those little cups that hold the grease.
Curls
and
up,
it gets, crispiness to it. And so, if you got a really true Columbus style pizza, it's got to have that Ezzo pepperoni on it.
If you guys are doing a pizza tour, though, it can't all be Columbus style pizza. So there must be other types of pizzas there. What else would we be sampling when we go on your pizza tour, Bethia?
People in Columbus are really obsessed with pizza.
Good.
We have there's a Facebook group called, I think whether it's called like Columbus Pizza Connoisseurs or Columbus Pizza Aficionados, but it is, rabidly, opinionated group on pizza. And we are lucky in Columbus that in addition to our tavern style pizza, we have all kinds of other styles of pizza. We have New York pizza, Chicago, Detroit, Neapolitan. We have a lot of kind of artisans doing really great wood-fired pizzas. And it seemed like last year, almost every week, there was some new pop-up pizza place opening. And you feel like, oh, we must have reached peak pizza, but no, there's always more pizza. So on our pizza tour, we have one of our favorite neighborhoods for pizza is the Italian Village area. It's a great walkable neighborhood, and it has some really fantastic pizza places. So we have, on that tour, we try Sicilian style pizza. We have a Neapolitan. We try a really great Detroit pizza. And then we have somewhere that does an Alsatian style pizza.
Oh, what's Alsatian pizza? I've never had that.
So it's cheese, bacon, and onions, I think it is.
Okay, I've seen this. Yeah.
It's delicious.
Well, Bethia Woolf from Columbus Food Adventures, people can get you at columbusfoodadventures.com. I suggest they take a tour and go on one of these many food tours that you guys do. Or if you're lucky enough to be in town when you're doing one of your chef's nights, that sounds like that would be an awful lot of fun.
Yeah, we also do a newsletter. We have a Substack newsletter we do about the Columbus food scene. So if people want to kind of learn more about what's going on in Columbus, columbusfoodletter.substack.com. We produce newsletters twice a week and cover a lot of the things we've been talking about, like Algerian pizza and what's going on in all the different immigrant neighborhoods. But yesterday we wrote about a new dim sum restaurant. So it's another thing people can check out if they're interested to learn more about Columbus.
Fantastic. I'll put a link to your Substack in the show notes along with columbusfoodadventures.com. Bethia Woolf, thanks for being on the show. It's been great talking to you. Looking forward to my next visit to Columbus.
Yeah, come see us next time you're stateside.
Okay, there you go. That's Bethia Woolf, and you can book a tour at columbusfoodadventures.com and check out her Substack at columbusfoodletter.substack.com. I've got links in the show notes. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're in Auckland, New Zealand for a memorable Samoan meal and the only Cambodian restaurant in the country. Plus, making gin out of old bread, something called Hokey Pokey Gelato, and tons of restaurant recommendations. Subscribe to Destination Eat Drink so you don't miss that. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.